There is this gentleman called Bryan who plans to live for centuries, and he's doing research into longevity. And this guy is a fascinating case study because of how dismissive he is of intuition and how much he is heavy on this sort of neurotic understanding of science that we have in the modern world. Now, if you look at this guy who's pursuing anti-aging, I actually would say he doesn't look that healthy. His skin looks very, very waxy. His hair looks a little bit thin. He seems a little bit low in the energy. He looks sort of gaunt and lacking in sort of fullness. Compare him to me and you see the way my skin is all flush. He looks like more of an Irishman than me, whereas mine is full of blood. I'm full of red blood, you know, pumping through me. But this Bryan guy, despite how he looks, has been convinced by looking at all his scientific instruments that he is hitting all his health markers. What I love about this is that we're getting forced to observe a scientific experiment, and we need to learn how to think scientifically. We need to learn how to think in order to get the result that we're looking for, and to think from first principles. And in fact, Nietzsche had an idea related to this that's very, very useful for us to understand what's going on. You see, Nietzsche in his day had a longevity cell. There was some Italian dude knocking about that he wrote about in Twilight of the Idols. Now, this Italian bloke was promoting a diet that was supposed to help you increase your longevity and increase the lifespan and make you live forever and make you live calm and all these types of things. And of course, Nietzsche was critiquing this. Nietzsche was suggesting that this guy was transforming people into cold fish. He was saying that this Italian guy had a very slow metabolism, and he was prone to living long anyway because the way of his metabolism worked. And so this guy was naturally attracted to like a slightly calorie restricted diet, and he was naturally attracted to slightly less food and certain foods that would keep the metabolism nice and slow, you know, lots of polyunsaturated fats and things like this. Now, Nietzsche pined and complained that if you got an excellent high vitality scholar with a blisteringly powerful imagination, full of iron and red blood, and needed high amounts of saturated fats and electricity, they needed sugar coursing through their veins, electrolytes striking them like lightning. If you came across a scholar like that and he read this Italian longevity cell and he believed that the healthy diet was this sort of metabolism slowing diet, this would have been a disaster. This scholar's brain would have stopped working. This scholar's brain would have started to get damp and started to prepare itself for a long winter of a 2,000 year life or something like this. And it would not spend all its energy being like a bolt of lightning that lives for 50 years but creates great works. Instead, it would invest all that in extending that. It would extend that out and it would lose its shine and its dynamism. And he was pointing out a very interesting question here. There seems to be an antagonistic relationship in human physiology between longevity and vitality. People like David Sinclair have seen this, that if you want to live long, you're not going to be able to live strong. The muscle pathway mTOR that triggers your body to actually get bigger and stronger is one of the things that ages you, for quite a logical reason, because when you grow, when you get bigger and stronger, your body has to copy DNA. It has to print more DNA. And every time your body copies a piece of DNA, it's creating an opportunity for a mistake to happen. So if you copy lots of DNA, if you take a load of growth hormone steroids and generate loads of new cells, there's going to be a certain amount of those that go wrong and you'll have a mutational load as a consequence of this. And so the best way for you to enhance your longevity is to actually slow down all those processes, to stop mTOR, to stop cell turnover and stop all these types of things, and instead make everything happen slower in a more conservative way. Turn into a traditionalist in some sense. Keep the cells that you have and make them last longer. And when you copy things, then it'll be more exact. Put yourself into a fasting state so that bad cells are destroyed more. Slow things down and do things more exact. And so David Sinclair follows along this idea basically that you want to have a diet that doesn't spike your insulin a crazy amount, a diet that stays very, very stable. You want to fast an awful lot. You want to put yourself in a sort of state of low level stress. And you want to do this with a calorie restriction. So you want to keep your overall calories down forever. You want to be lighter in weight and everything. You don't want to be somebody like a bodybuilder. Now think about a bodybuilder, the opposite example, pure vitality. Inject testosterone, inject growth hormone, inject IGF-1, inject these anabolic hormones that cause you to divide more cells, risk getting cancer that you take so much of this stuff. Eat copious amounts of food so you get massive and heavy, risk making your heart explode and get damaged in order for you to pursue these goals. For the sake of feeling like a king, blistering full of testosterone, your mind firing on 100 kilometers an hour or something like this, take it all. You want massive insulin spikes. You want to get as much food into you as you possibly can in order for you to turn massive, for your brain to work on the apex capacity that it can work. This is an entirely antagonistic approach towards life. This is almost speeding up your life. Instead of you slowly burning the candle, you actually take a flamethrower through it and you burn through all your life in a shorter amount of time so you can live it bigger and strong. Ironically, we have Bryan Johnson, the longevity cell, and the representation of this vitality approach would be Liver King, whose name is also Bryan Johnson. Quite fascinating when you see that one play out. Two of the most extreme health characters that have shown up in recent years, they've both got the same name. There's something Jungian going on here. Some type of archetype has been activated. The Bryans are coming to save us from death and all these things. So there's a chance that longevity cell Bryan Johnson is trading out vitality. The measurements of science that he has approached, geared towards longevity, have made him make choices that are going to actually massively reduce his vitality in the short term. And maybe he will live a little bit longer, but he's extending out his life, but not necessarily raising the quality of that life. If he focused on keeping his vitality as high as possible for as long as possible, he probably wouldn't live as long. His metabolism would burn out and he would die, he'd perspire sooner. But he would actually have a high quality of life for an extended period of time. And what you can see in the flaw in thinking here, or the potential flaw in thinking here, is not being able to marry these two things properly. People making this trade-off, thinking that longevity in and of itself is a good goal, live forever. But instead, I think the true apex, the true struggle, is figuring out how we can live long and live vital at the same time. How can we keep those two things as high as possible? Because obviously becoming a 300-pound bodybuilder in your 20s might be, you might live like a god for a while, but then you're going to die, before your 40s from a heart attack or something like this. Your liver's going to give out. But then obviously living to 250 but looking like a fish, an amphibian or something like this, that's not exactly a win either, having 0% testosterone or something like this. Where do we start to hit these middle grounds? I think this is going to become a fascinating question for this whole longevity, health, the biochemistry, futurism type thing in the future, and one area to watch.